Hello and welcome back to the GB Fantasy Football channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the 5 biggest mistakes that you can make in your Sun Dream Team season. These are the things that we're trying to avoid to get as high up in the leaderboards as possible and even potentially winning those mini leagues. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to thank you all for the support on the channel. We are around, I believe, currently on 699 subscribers, so the 700 mark is pretty much hit, and I'd like to thank you all for hitting that subscribe button. If we could target 1000 mark before the start of the season, that would be incredible. It's a long shot, I know, but if all of you hit that subscribe button, the faster we get there, it'd be greatly appreciated. I think 80% of you who are currently watching this video are unsubscribed, so go ahead and hit it. The like button's there as well. If you do enjoy today's content, hit that bell notification so you don't miss a video. However, further ado, let's crack on with the video. So as mentioned in the introduction, today's video is going to be based around the 5 biggest mistakes that you could be making in your Sun Dream Team season. Now this is off the past experience that I had in the previous campaign. There'll be many more experienced veterans across all avenues and all fantasy formats, but these are from my own experiences, just a little bit of knowledge from last season. Now the code for my Sun Dream Team League will be just underneath my camera underneath, so please do go check it out, and it will also be in this description down below. We're growing popularity over there. We're getting numbers through the door daily. I think there's over 40 or 50 at least now. Every time I look, it's more and more, and it's blowing me away, so do go join that if you'd like to as well. Now the first one on today's video is picking players who are a doubt. Now this might seem like just a normal thing that many of us think about, but some will go into the season with players in their team that are just extremely doubtful. And on this format more than any others, you just can't do that. There's no bench in Sun Dream Team, so there's no second chances. Of course, this year it is slightly different. You have the substitution booster, but we'll get to that in a little while. With all the tinkering and all the just draft building time that we've got prior to the season, having to make a change rather than wanting to make a change in those early few weeks is something that we should be able to avoid. Don't be picking players who are injured prior to it. So players that are currently springing to mind are Dominic Solanke, Levi Colwill and James Maddison. All of them have got knocks, of course. With Maddison and Colwill, they are much bigger injuries and they are pretty much out for the entire season. Solanke, there's massive doubts around him without even kicking a ball in pre-season so far. I think at most he's got 45 minutes. So with so many options across the game, just don't put yourself through all that hassle and just pick a player who is going to be out on that pitch, potentially for 90 minutes, but certainly one that is fit from the off. Transfer wise as well, another one that springs to mind is Alexander Isak. Eze is another one slightly. He's had massive doubts over his Newcastle future. He's been left out of the squad for I think it's their friendly tournament this evening. They drew 2-2. I don't think he will play for Newcastle again. There's no reason to put him in your teams ahead of this season, because whether he's going to be a Liverpool player or a Newcastle player, he shouldn't be fit for that first game, and that's not what you want, especially from such a premium asset. Eze slightly different. I think he will end up staying at Crystal Palace. He's at £5.5 million price point in midfield. Of course, he was such a fantastic asset last season, and there are still murmurs of a Arsenal transfer, or at least Arsenal wanting to explore the transfer, and it's putting us off, a few of us. I don't see it I don't see it coming to fruition. But with that doubt there, you don't want doubtful players, and that's just the way it is. Also, rotation risk. I know a lot of you have gone for Malo Gusto in defence from Chelsea. He did start today's pre-season friendly, but with Reece James constantly looming in the background, yes, I know Enzo Maresca has played Reece James in midfield several times, but I still see him playing at right back in a few games. So Gusto's one that springs to mind. Also, Victor Gyökeres of Arsenal. He came in at a premium price point, a bit too high in my personal opinion, especially when there's players like Kai Havertz who are waiting in the wings. I actually do believe that Kai Havertz will start the first game of the season away to Man United up front, but that is just a personal opinion. It's just based on Arteta's things in the past and how he has his favourites. He has his Kai Havertz of the world. Of course, Saka plays with one leg basically, even if he's injured. So players like that, rotation risks, injury risks, and potential transfer moves slash rumours slash news, you'd want to stay away from all of them and just have a settled starting 11 with no risk of any of them going into the start of the campaign. The second point on my list today about the 5 biggest mistakes to make in your Sun Dream Team season is using your boosters early. Now, I will take it back to another fantasy game that I'm sure a few of you do play, and that is Fantasy Premier League itself, FPL. They've doubled up on their boosters this year. I think there's either 6 or 8 going into that entire season, and they are being used in the first game weeks from 1 to 19. On Sun Dream Team, that is not the case. You will get the 3 boosters, your 12th man, your, I believe it's goal bonus, and then there's just all the others. We've obviously got the substitution booster this season as well, which you can use a maximum of 5 times in the season, 5 individual times, that is. So compared to last year, we do have 5 more game weeks of boosters. But personally, things like the goal bonus, despite it giving you an early boost of points and maybe pushing you up to the top of your mini league in the first few weeks, long-term planning and long-term wise, it will actually harm you massively. You want to be targeting a double game week further down the line, probably around the European Cup ties, mainly because in the early round of the Carabao Cup and the early round of the FA Cup, when that comes around in January, there's a lot more rotation. When we get into the early part of September and midway through that, when there's Champions League football mainly, of course in the Europa League and Conference League, teams do indeed rotate in that. So when Champions League comes around and you've got a Premier League, Champions League double in that game week, it's a prime time target to use that goal bonus. 12th man, a little different, but once again, you will be targeting a double game week rather than a single. If you're targeting a week where a player such as Erling Haaland has like a Burnley at home and you're just not quite got him in your team or haven't got the funds, I still feel like there's more benefit to holding it back for those double game weeks. If he's got I don't know, a Tottenham and a Real Madrid and a double, that's giving you 2 chances, 2 bites at the cherry for goal returns, assists. It's doubling down. It's giving you a bigger opportunity, and that's all that we're looking out for this. And obviously, more games. Normally, of course, it isn't always the case, but normally more games equals more points, and that's what we are targeting throughout the campaign. Last year, I used my 12th man on a Chelsea double. I think they had Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. They might have even had Newcastle in the league as well. It might have been a Newcastle double. Cole Palmer didn't play the second fixture, and it left me a little bit short at the back end of the season. And I do think to myself, what could have been if those points would have been put to good use? So for the boosters and everything that that brings, I'd be targeting doubles, hold back, plan ahead, take a deep breath, and use them in the optimum windows of opportunity. My third point of today's video is setting the squad out in the correct manner. Now, more specifically, getting price points up and down the pitch. Whether that be in defence, midfield, or attack, we want a range of price points. Now, I've looked at a few drafts recently where it's very top heavy. You've got 5 or 6 premium assets in attack, but the defence is lacking substantially. Maybe even in midfield, there's a budget option around 2 million, with the rest of your midfielders in the 5 to 6 million range, and that can cause problems. Now, if these budget options going into the start of the season don't quite hit the ground running, you're left stranded. Now, already, if you're looking from that, I'd say 2 to 2.5 million range in defenders and midfielders, there's not much going on in there. If you've got a player like, I'm trying to think, Lewis Dunk, for argument's sake, at Brighton, if he starts the season poorly and doesn't play that Carabao Cup fixture in the second game week, where can you go to? Where is the next point of call? If he's taken a 0.1 or 0.2 decrease and you've not got funds being taken from elsewhere, you're having to look in that 2 million range for a potential player that has gone up in price. Whereas if you start with a couple of £3.5 million assets across the back line, maybe even a few in midfield for argument's sake, you can target those 4 million players. If your 3.5 million player has a couple of good game weeks, a 0.2 and 0.3 rise here and there, all of a sudden you're bumping from a mid-ranged asset to a lower premium ranged asset just in the space of a few game weeks. And that is what we're looking for. We're trying to get those big hitters as soon as possible. We're trying to get money into the squad. We start off with 50 million in this game, and we're trying to get to that 55, 60 million as fast as possible, so we don't have to make these decisions. We don't have to cut the big players away and we can get rid of the promoted teams and the teams that aren't having double game weeks. And this is what we need. Goalkeeper wise, I think it's slightly different. If you're going for a cheap goalkeeper and it's a set and forget, it can be used as a budget building enabler throughout. I think if you be like an Areola, for argument's sake, yes, I know he might not start for West Ham. They're linked with Hermanson from Leicester, so he is just an example going forward. But Areola, 2.5 million, a couple of save points each week. Let's say he's picking up 4 to 5. You'll end up staying around that 2.5 million to 3 million range for at least, I'd say, 4 to 6 game weeks. And if that is what your strategy is about, absolutely go for it. But personally, in defence and midfield, I'd look to spread the funds just a little bit and allow yourself to have more options across the board. Don't get yourself bogged down by those budget enablers. So the penultimate point in today's video is picking players based on their name and their name alone. Of course, when we're trying to pick players, we're picking form, we're picking fixtures, but we're also subconsciously picking names as well. Someone that springs to mind, there's a couple, Phil Foden and Heung-min Son. Of course, he has since left to go to LAFC in the MLS, but there would have been a few of us, myself included, towards the back end of last season that picked him off his previous campaigns and his previous scoring form, not necessarily his form in the last 6 to 12 months. Phil Foden being a prime example, I owned him in several game weeks last season. He did okay, to be fair, for Manchester City, but compared to the previous campaign, I believe it was 23-24 campaign when he won Player of the Season, he was nowhere near the same standard. And when you get to that price, I think he's currently 5 million in Sun Dream Team. We can't gamble on maybes. They have to be nailed assets, they have to be on form, and they have to be getting us points from all kinds of avenues. Also, with Sun Dream Team, it's important not to pick players that are good on other fantasy games just because you've got them on there. So on here, there will be standout players that don't necessarily slip into your mind or into your drafts for other games like FPL or Telegraph, for example. So someone like a O'Brien or Tolkowski, currently a very popular asset on FPL. However, on this game, he might be picking you up some clean sheet points, maybe the occasional tackle point, but he's not going to offer you anything going forward for the bonus point system. He does offer a little bit of goal threat, but another one, Mickey van der Ven, heavily owned on this game currently, and I think that's to do with players like Udogie being injured and offering a little bit more reliability at the back. But even with van der Ven, his injury history is pretty poor. What can you expect from a 3.5 million asset rather than it being Mickey van der Ven? Can you get better value from a £2.5 million player? Van der Ven, 3.5 million, is going to get you a clean sheet maybe in the opening fixture at home to Burnley, but that's up for debate with the PSG game just a few days prior. The turnaround's pretty quick. But don't just go for the big names because you know them from the big teams. Try and scout around. Try and see if you can get a bargain. I'd also put Gyökeres in that category as well. Stay away, in my opinion, for those first 3 game weeks. There's potential better value elsewhere. For I think Gyökeres is 6 million. He's got Man United away and Liverpool away. Yes, he's his snazzy brand new transfer. Yes, he's Arsenal's new quote number 9 or number 14 on his back, whatever position you want to label him as, the number 9 with the number 14. But will he actually play? I don't think he will. And that's what you want. All these people coming through the door, can we pick the players that are just going to get the best points? Not the household names, just the ones that are going to tick us over with the occasional Salah and Haaland and Palmer and Saka and Bruno. You tried and trusted. The ones that are priced that reason with a bit of history behind them. And that's what we want. We need them players that have got multiple avenues, history behind them, and just all the good things related to them. And the last point on today's list is one that many of us take for granted, but it's extremely important to keep in mind every single week without fail, and that is missing the deadline. Now, this season compared to last season, it won't be as detrimental to your season. Of course, in the last campaign, you had 2 transfers going from one week to the other. If you didn't use any, you lost one, and had 3 transfers the following week, but you couldn't get it back. Of course, this season, if you miss the deadline, your 2 transfers will go to 4 transfers, and you might be in a slightly better position for the following week, but missing out on points in that week alone. But you don't want to miss the deadline. You don't want to get flustered. You want to keep calm, composed, and make your decisions well ahead of time. Now, the app is prone to a few digital errors when the deadline is approaching. Sometimes your transfers don't go through, sometimes your team doesn't save. So make sure well ahead of the deadline you are set, because especially for game week 1, when the deadline is 8 p.m. on the 25th of August. I don't actually think that's correct. I think it's the 15th of August. So 8 p.m. on the 15th of August, it's next Friday. Make sure your team is set well ahead of time, because the influx of players, the amount of people that are tinkering with just a few minutes to go, there's a high chance the app will crash across the board, and that's not what you want. After all these weeks and months of planning, you don't want your team to look not how you wanted it to look, because that is going to be how it will be for the next few weeks at least before you can change it. So keep an eye on the deadline. Now, in the rules currently, it's a bit hard to understand. Last year, the deadline shut every week, 90 minutes before the first Premier League fixture, or just a fixture in general for that game week, whether it be cup competitions or domestic league. It was always 90 minutes beforehand, so getting early team news was quite problematic. Now, if I'm led to believe from what they put out in their news bulletins earlier on in the season, I think they might have took it back to only 60 minutes before the deadline, but I will have to look into that in further detail. If that is the case, it'd be great for early team news, and it means there'll be less doubt for the players that we're putting into our team. We can assume that they will definitely be playing with the starting lineups already out. Of course, people can pull up with an injury in the warm-ups, but we can give ourselves the best possible opportunity, and that is what the deadline is about. Thankfully, last season, despite all the pitfalls and problems that the app had, I didn't actually miss a deadline, but I know full well a few people who did. It put them back, and in fact, it actually stopped them enjoying the game quite substantially. Because if you're doing really well, and then through no fault of your own, the app loses your transfers or puts your team in a structure that you didn't want it to, it can actually make your mindset quite negative going forward, because you think to yourself, why bother? Why put so much effort in when one silly mistake and it's put me so far back, and climbing back and clawing all that back is quite problematic and difficult. So don't do that to yourself if possible. Well ahead of time, good planning is key, and get those teams set well ahead of the deadline before the Liverpool Bournemouth game next Friday. And that concludes today's video, I'm afraid. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've taken a few tips from this video of what not to do ahead of the campaign starting next Friday. I'm very excited. Draft's still being tinkered massively. In fact, the price points, everything that I've mentioned in this video, I'm trying to take it on board myself. Every day is a learning day when it comes to the draft, and it's looking okay, it's looking good, but there's still plenty to improve going forward. Once again, thank you for the support on the channel. It really does mean a lot. I believe we're at 700 subscribers now, which is a massive milestone. If we can reach that huge 1,000 mark before the season starts next Friday, that would be incredible. But that is the target. Hopefully we can reach it. Drop a thumbs up if you've enjoyed today's video. All the socials will be in the description below. We've got TikTok, we've got Instagram, we've got X, we've got all that good stuff. The league code will also be down there, so go check that out if you'd like to join as well. That's it, I'm afraid. Thank you very much for watching, and you'll be seeing me in a new video very soon.